Hi guys, welcome to another YouTube Artist Collective video. YTAC is a group of art YouTubers who every other month create art based around a prompt. I'm not a member, but they let anyone participate in an unofficial capacity. I love doing themed videos and seeing everyone's interpretation of the concept, so this is, I think, my third YTAC video. The prompt for this month is Masquerade Ball, which always makes me think of that scene from The Labyrinth, which in turn always makes me think of Brian Froud, which makes me think of fairies. So faerie masquerade it is! I love the original Venetian-style masquerade masks, but I wanted to do something different. I did Google fairy masquerade to find some inspiration, and I found some incredible masks that kind of looked like fairy wings. I didn't want to just draw someone else's design, however, and I also decided I wanted to do something kind of weird and have the eyes entirely hidden. So because I wanted her eyes to be hidden, I knew I needed to focus on the mask and have it be really unique and everything about the piece to draw attention to it. I ended up playing with a few different shapes for the mask before deciding on this one. In the end, I think it feels very fairy, but also a bit insect-like. A lot of the elements of the piece are chosen to purposefully draw attention to the mask, including her pose, which is a big one. I brought her hands up because I knew it would help focus the attention around her face. Though I did originally plan on having her wear a skin-tight dress, and during the sketching process you can see there were quite a few variations, I then decided to give in and just do the big billowy skirt. I also decided before I even started painting this that I wanted to use a burgundy and neon green color scheme, even though I know I used one really similar to this when I worked on my collaboration piece with Chianti. Do you ever get color palettes just kind of stuck in your brain? I really wanted the richness of the burgundy to give a sense of elegance, but then to have this really bright, chaotic green to contrast. Before I started painting this, though, I didn't know what medium to use. I really did want to use watercolor, but my schedule this week has been kind of weird with my day job, so I didn't think I'd have time to sit down in my office and paint every night. Digital paintings I can do anywhere thanks to my iPad Pro. I've also been looking at quite a few tutorials for rendering digital paintings, including one on ambient occlusion in 2D art that I discovered through Austin Marie. Either way, I knew I needed to get the inking done. And then, as you probably already gathered, I stopped inking it. And I got rid of the inks. I just didn't really like how they were turning out. I wanted to jump into the coloring process, but I was also scared because what if it took me hours and hours to color something without lines? What if I didn't finish this in time for this week's video? Which, in hindsight, is kind of a strange fear to have as an artist. But I really wanted to try it, so I decided to start with her face. If I could get her nose and lips and her face to look fine without any lines to fall back on, then I had to be able to paint the rest of her, right? I mean, never mind that I'm far better at rendering faces than most of the rest of the body, especially fabric, but we'll get to that later. As you've probably been able to tell by now, I worked on her entirely in grayscale against this slightly pinky background, so she was easier to differentiate. I may have changed it to blue at some point to change up how I viewed the shading, and I can't remember when I did that, but I'm sure you'll notice in the video. She was separated into many different layers. Her skin, her corset, her skirt, and all the different parts of her mask were on their own base layers, with their own shadow layers on top of that set to multiply. My goal was to get her to look like some kind of either a naked 3D object without any textures applied, or more like a clay sculpture without paint. I really do like the more painterly style of artists like Loish and Siren, but in this case I wanted something very smooth. I used the soft airbrush in Procreate, and I would apply shading before scaling it back and molding it with the eraser. There are some incredibly dark shadows that I brought in intending to lighten them later on down the line, but I'll get to that in a bit. Digital painting without lines has always really baffled me before. Like, how do you just smack color on there and then paint and blend and end up with a finished piece without any lines to give you an idea where things are? I really prefer this method that I used in terms of my ability to understand what the heck is going on. It's easier for me to picture how things overlap over other things and layer on top of one another. I wish I could say that I found some great reference picture for the lighting, but, well, the unfortunate thing about reference is that if you don't have it going into a piece, chances are you won't find it after you're midway through the piece, because nothing will really match what you've got on your canvas or what you have in your head. So if I can impart one bit of wisdom on you, try to work alongside reference. It's cool if you can draw from your brain and do anatomy and all that jazz, but reference will help you out so much. And in my case, I really should have had reference for the shading and light. Sometimes your brain just can't imagine the intricacies of how light hits an object, and it's not wrong to roughly base your rendering on reference, because some aspects of this image did end up weaker because I didn't have reference, which brings me back to the point about the fabric, in that I didn't really know how to shade or highlight fabric, especially the corset. It turned out really rough. I have also never added color to a grayscale image before, and so adding life to something that feels very dead and clay-like was really tricky, and I made the mistake of merging all my shadow layers. I had them set up with the lighter shadows, the mid shadows, and then the very, very dark, deep shadows, and I merged them all for some reason. And it was one of those things I did where I didn't realize how it would affect the rendering until I attempted to make the dark shadows paler, and I lost all the transitional shadow layers in the process. I would have loved to have more control over every layer of shadow, but I had made that mistake, and then it was just too long ago to Control-Z my way out of it. So some areas are way darker than they need to be and look kind of strange. But like I mentioned, this was my first try with this style of digital painting, and I think it still looks okay for a first try. At least there's enough contrast, if nothing else. I might be going easy on myself with this one because I did do something entirely out of my comfort zone, something I didn't know I could even do with any level of success. I know there's a lot I need to learn when it comes to rendering, and even more to learn about it when it comes to watercolor, but for right now, I'm pretty happy with this piece, and I hope you enjoyed watching me work on her and learned from my myriad of super dumb mistakes. That's all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this, please give it a like. I probably sound kind of awkward in this voiceover because this is the first time in months and months that I've had my partner in the next room potentially able to hear me cursing at myself as I mess up. Man, if only I saved my bloopers. But anyway, if you enjoyed hearing me ramble, please subscribe. It really means so much, and I hope to see you at my next video. Bye!